Hello and welcome to another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson, the government and political host for this show for over a decade anyway. When you combine it with Power News, its predecessor to Western Wisconsin Journal, we have a repeat guest here today, Representative Shannon Zimmerman. Shannon, welcome to the show.
I'm thrilled to be here again, Jamie. Thanks for the invitation.
You bet. And kind of a twofold purpose. First of all, we've had you on before, actually a couple times when you were first running for the office of Assembly, had you on as a candidate. And then once we were pretty far into the budget process, you came, kind of gave us a 6-month recap, if you will, that first 6 months. And we finally got the budget passed, and we asked to have you back on. But we did not have the ESP to know the future as far as Senator Harsdorf now stepping down, becoming the Secretary for Department of Ag and Consumer Protection. And she's taken that post, created a vacancy in the Senate, so there's a special election coming up.
There is.
And it's not as many candidates as we have for governor, but there are a handful of folks that are running for the position, and at least 2 on the Republican side, I understand.
That's true.
So we're past the point of nomination papers?
Yep.
Okay. So take us through, first of all, let's start there. Why are you running? And just describe a little bit the decision to run, because obviously you're a first-term Assembly person, have learned the ropes now, so why are you getting into the Senate race? And so start there.
Well, you know, Jamie, you hit it spot on, which is that probably no one could have forecast this unique set of circumstances that we're now facing. And I would love to begin by acknowledging and recognizing Senator Sheila Harsdorf for the great work that she did on behalf of Western Wisconsin. And I have no reservations that she's going to do a stellar job, certainly serving the state as Secretary of Agriculture. So congratulations to her. The decision to run, you know, I think that first of all, it's rooted in what were some of the early reasons I ran for office in the first place. As I know you know, I have spent over 20 years in this community, really in the shadows to some degree, as a business owner, growing a large company that started from our living room, and we're grateful and appreciative certainly for that success. But part of the reason I originally ran goes back to that. You know, when you take a dream and something you're passionate about, and you get other people in the community that now came to work for us and work with us, that's humbling. And there's a feeling you're just grateful for that. And so when I rewind back and I reflect and think about why did I run in the first place, you know, by and large, the motivation's still the same. I want to leave this place better than I found it. And we have a great, great community. In fact, an exceptional community area. The state of Wisconsin, it's the best state, you know, in the nation. And so you draw on your years of experience and the gifts that God gives you, and you want to apply them towards something good. And so the original motivation to run was to tackle large economic topics, subjects that I certainly care deeply about, to also tackle opportunities like education and to do better and improve things there for the taxpayer, but also for our students, and most importantly, all the companies, you know, in the area that benefit from these folks, tax reform, etc. But this particular seat is a little bit unique, and it brings together something else that I felt was appropriate. Before moving to River Falls in 1996, I think it was, you know, I grew up in a really small rural Wisconsin, western Wisconsin community, a little town of Augusta, Wisconsin.
Oh, Augusta, okay.
Yeah, it's
over east of Eau Claire.
A lot of Amish, and you know, it's a small town, and I know what it's like to grow up in rural America, where, you know, you maybe had one anchor employer in the area, and if that employer was doing great, so was the town. If that employer wasn't doing so great, well, neither was the town. And that perspective today influences me a lot. And so when I thought about the diversity of the 10th Senate District, you know, all those factors came together to say, look, you know, as I was talking with my wife, we were praying about it, going, you know, should I do this? It just became clear, yeah, I should. And I still want to execute the agenda that I set forth as a representative. And from a Senate seat, my feeling and my contention is that It gives me the ability, a little greater sphere of influence to potentially move more aggressively, get those major milestones accomplished. And then I want to come home and hand the baton off to somebody else, because we have other great people in this community that I'm certain will step up to the call.
All right. Well, there was people that stepped up to the call and announced their candidacy for this. You were not the first, and you took some time. So what was the reason for that? I mean, there were some people who jumped in the same day that she announced. Yep. They announced that they're running for it. So.
Well, first of all, I think that all these decisions require a lot of careful thought, and as I mentioned, I don't shy away from the fact that you got to pray on these things, and you got to feel really good, and the reservation, I think, for me was the timing of everything, right, to some degree, and there was two major parts. My concern was the perception, well, you're a first-term representative. And then, the argument really was, well, in this case, my opponent is a two-termer. So there's really... And
by your opponent, you're referring just to the primary opponent, Adam Jarkow. We can say his name. You may
Absolutely.
Not say it. But he happens to also be an assembly person.
Yep.
So, and I was looking at his literature and your website and some of the posts that you've had on Facebook. So very similar. You're both pro-life, pro-gun, hunting, sportsman, anti-opioid epidemic.
Yep.
I wanted to focus a little bit differences.
Okay.
So let's go there. Especially in these primaries, and at a time when it's being scheduled the week before Christmas, December 19th, by the way, for voters out there in either party. I think there's a primary.
There is.
So you have to vote that day, and Wisconsin's still open primary, right? So you don't have to have been registered at a specific party to be able to vote. So when people are deciding, which party they want and which person they want, what would set you apart from your opponent?
Well, I want to begin by saying that, look, Representative Jarkow, Adam Jarkow, is a friend of mine, and he's a colleague of mine. I've said that multiple times at different events, and I will say it again here this evening. My race is about why I think I'm perfect for this spot. This is not and will not be an attack on my colleague. I wouldn't do that. It wouldn't be me. So I'll tell you why I think what distinguishes me. Back to those rural roots. Sometimes we use fancy words like modest beginnings to put some polish on the fact that you were poor, and that was really how I grew up. I have said many times, and for people who don't know this, and there was a time in my life as a young kid where I had a single mom. She had 3 jobs. She did everything she could for myself and my 2 younger sisters. And at the end of the day, it was still tough for us. I had to have paper routes, and in a rural community, I would work whatever farm jobs I could get, to earn money. Whether it came to school clothes, I had to contribute to those things. And I remember the days, literally, of having these big blocks of cheese in our refrigerator because the state would sometimes subsidize a little food to us that way. And so when you come from that and then having progressed, and again, I'm so grateful and so appreciative to the community members who took this little dream that my wife and I had in our living room in River Falls, this company that we would go on to build with their cooperation, with their help. You develop a lot of experiences and a lot of skills and a lot of things that can apply, and I can apply now to the 10th Senate District. For example, the 10th Senate District has some of the most rural communities as well. And the economic development in those areas, I'm a big believer, and you'll hear this everywhere I go. One of the top things that I think about every day I wake up, and it is my compass and my true north, is economic betterment, economic development in all of its forms and fashions. Because when people are working and they have good, not just good jobs, but let's just use the careers word here for a second, life is good. These are families that can now take care of their kids, and they can invest in different activities locally. So that's something that my background, I think, distinguishes me in my capability to not only address those sort of issues because I've seen them, but let's come over to Hudson now and River Falls. I mean, it is the fastest growing area in the state of Wisconsin right now. I'm proud of that. We have to stop thinking about Wisconsin as being Madison and Milwaukee only. They better pay attention to us. We're adjacent to a major metropolitan and revenue center. We've got brilliant, dynamic people who reside here, who are creating new jobs, companies that are moving in here. That's a whole different set of challenges or opportunities, we can use those words, that again, that my background in growing an international company with a few hundred employees has given me the ability to, I think, influence and make better decisions on behalf of all of our residents here in this community and in the 10th Senate District. So that's going to be a key focal point of mine in distinguishing myself as the person to choose for this race.
So businessman, entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and not much for a law background then.
No, no, I don't have a law background. I've obviously been a person who's operated under and within the boundaries of law, certainly over my lifetime. I like to think of it this way, and this is the practice we take in business. Sadly in life, common sense isn't so common anymore, and we need more of it. I don't ever want to be defined by the sheer quantity of bills that I write. That's not of interest to me. And in fact, I'd say this. In the Capitol, any moment in time, Jamie, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of bills that are in some form or stage. And I want to be respectful of all those authors. It's not that I think that those bills are unimportant. I just don't think that they're as important as some of the topics that I want to tackle. The state of Wisconsin is in a good place. I mean, whether you love or hate Governor Walker or maybe the legislators who have gone before, we're in a good spot financially right now. And what I want to be able to do is draw upon my life's experiences to build from that foundation. I want to look 10, 20, and 30 years down the road so that when the changes that we implement, they're affecting my grandchildren who live in River Falls, who live in this community. And if that's what I'm able to look back and say, well, then I did my job.
So I know your big emphasis on economic growth, creating good jobs.
Yep.
Family supporting type of jobs.
Absolutely.
And so what do you see as some drivers for ways that we could do that?
Okay. We have a problem. We have a huge problem right now. We feel it, in fact, in a more intensified way in probably my assembly district, District 30 for sure. But I know we're feeling it even in the broader 10th Senate District. We have a workforce shortage. And unemployment is reaching, what some could argue is near zero in some areas. And so that you could say, well, that's a high class problem. Well, maybe it is, but it's a problem nonetheless. So what can we do to resolve that? Well, I have a plan, and I have certainly some strong thoughts on this. If ever there was a time that we as a state should consider seriously looking at, I'll say, tax reform and tax modification so as to positively benefit some of those things, it's right now. Why? Based on our current economic conditions, the broader macroeconomic conditions, both around us and nationally, I think that we have an opportunity here to, as one example, look at our income tax. What if for a moment we said, let's take the income tax and let's either materially reduce it maybe to a flat tax, or let's even just dream for a second here, what if we eliminated it? Now, there's a number of benefits that I've thought through on this one. First, I've spoken with potential retirees, soon-to-be retirees across this district, those who are retired. Well, they're on fixed incomes or will be on fixed incomes. If more of their money was in their pocket, that's better. And they're not likely to leave the state. They're not going to, maybe dash off.
Well, isn't that one of the problems that, if you said things are good in Wisconsin, but one of the things that is of concern is we're losing people. We have fewer representatives in Congress because of a reduced population, and we're continuing to have a brain drain of folks who are going elsewhere to the Sun Belt states. Yep. And one of the things that disincentivizes people from living in the state is if we have an income tax, if they declare Wisconsin their residency. I guess that's
You got it. You got it, exactly. Now, I'll say fix the weather. I like our weather, but I do understand some people may want to vacation to the warmer states during the wintertime. But there is no question in my mind that if we were to make a substantial change to the income tax, it would have a positive effect on those people, and it would allow us to keep more of those folks here. And even if you're semi-retired or retired, you're still contributing in the community. In some way, you're certainly buying, you're still spending money here. There's other things that you're doing. And so that's a huge benefit. That's one beneficiary. Number two, what about our graduates? You talked about a brain drain and people leaving. human beings are predictable in a few ways, right? It's pain or pleasure. Well, if more of your money and your paycheck can stay in your pocket, you're more likely to remain and take a job in Wisconsin. So why wouldn't we consider that? That's a huge benefit. Third and finally, as an entrepreneur and now, certainly an established business in the area, and actually multiple businesses, we opened a winery, a number of years later. If you have that tax a benefit in place, employers, entrepreneurs are going to know that they can get workforce because people are going to want to be in that state working. Companies that are considering relocation areas would also consider Wisconsin as a destination. So look, I don't claim to be a rocket scientist here, but there's common truths in business. First to market wins generally, or has a strong advantage. So why wouldn't we take this approach? And when you look at the upper Midwest right now and you compare ourselves to Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, very different story in Illinois, of course, maybe Michigan, and you look at the demographics, we're strikingly similar. Most of these states we're an aging population, we deal with most of the same weather and what have you. If we were to distinguish ourselves, build on the great reforms that have now been already put in place, and then distinguish ourselves with some of the ideas I'm talking about here, we become first to market. We become the destination for all these people that want to work here. They want to relocate into the state and take our jobs, and we resolve that issue.
Okay, speaking of locating jobs in the state,
yeah.
Let's go to Foxconn, all right? Something that was a big headline this year.
Yep.
In fact, it almost could be argued that it kind of held up the budget a little bit because it wasn't until we had the Foxconn vote and then the budget was approved. So
yeah.
Where did you stand on that deal?
I voted in favor of Foxconn. I'll give you just a bit of background on it because this is important to make sure this message gets out. I also serve on the committee, the Jobs and Economy Committee. It's a committee I love serving on. And I spent hours, literally hours, well into the evening or early morning hours in some committee hearings, focused on testimony, hearing testimony from a variety of different folks, all related to the Foxconn opportunity. And there's two ways one can look at this. We can look at it as, glass half full or half empty. We're pledging, or what could be $3 billion in earned tax credits, okay? So that very statement should be telling, Foxconn has to invest $10 billion into the state of Wisconsin. To earn that money, their $3 billion in tax credits, they've got to create 13,000 jobs. In investigating all of the facets of what they've got going, here's a couple things I need people in western, northern, in the far-reaching areas of Wisconsin to consider.
Where they think that they're less impacted by this.
Right. And there's no question that will southeast Wisconsin benefit perhaps slightly greater? Sure. But I would also make this argument, rising tide lifts all boats. Don't forget that. When there's more people, more income, more revenue being spent in the state of Wisconsin, more people vacationing up north, everybody benefits from that. But let's get specific for a second about the supply chain. A couple key areas I was focused on. I was focused on how and what could you materially show me, Foxconn, that was happening in terms of your reach out into areas like Hudson or Eau Claire, Wisconsin, or Hayward, Wisconsin, you name it. They have already put in place, and they are actively right now recruiting suppliers, partners, vendors, manufacturers in all of these locations. So they're already showing and demonstrating a willingness to follow this. Number two, they talked about a tighter integration into our education system. Too many of our graduates leave the state, Jamie. We've got to stop that. Why not have a great employer in the state of Wisconsin? Doesn't mean you have to move to southeastern Wisconsin. You can take jobs and be part of that supply chain. They've reached out. I talked to President Ray Cross. I talked to head of the technical colleges. They are already active and engaging with our educational systems so that our Wisconsin kids can stay and work in the state of Wisconsin. So when that opportunity came up, I was for it. And finally, and this is a really important one to me, I lived it, mind you. Not on a scale of $10 billion, but in 2004, I believe it was, our little River Falls company had been growing, and we were actually growing quite aggressively. And we got to the point we had eclipsed all of the available rental office space in River Falls. We faced a challenge. We knew we needed to build a 25,000 square foot office center. Where to build it? Well, we looked around Hudson and River Falls, but you wouldn't be shocked to hear, the Woodburys and the Oakdales, and there was other people that certainly were trying to recruit us to make that investment across the river in Minnesota, arguing that it's a greater population center and what have you. Well, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation stepped up, and they said, I tell you what, we'll offer you a tax credit, Sagen, it's a language translation company, and you got to create 30 jobs to earn it. It's an earned credit. Similar concept. It's an earned credit if you create 30 jobs. Well, in the period of measurement, we created 130 jobs. The company still resides and is headquartered in St. Croix County, and I'm proud of what happened there. So the model, I can tell you, works. And that's why I was a yes vote, and I stood with Governor Walker in support of this.
So is there any fail-safes in the bill so that, or in the law that supported this? If they don't create 13,000 jobs, it's only half that much, then what happens?
There's clawbacks. There's an assortment of clawbacks that are in the contract. And remember, because of the nature of how they're earned primarily one of two ways. One, on monies spent in the state of Wisconsin on materials. Well, all these materials, I promise you, they don't just come from southeastern Wisconsin. They're going to come from other locations. So monies that they spend, proven they can validate in the state of Wisconsin, they can earn on. As well, salaries, monies that are spent on salaries in the state, they can also earn on. So if they don't do that, they don't earn as much of that tax credit. And if they were to violate other provisions of the contract, well, then the state of Wisconsin has the ability to claw back in a variety of different ways.
Okay. Now, in there, you also mentioned, we've talked about a couple times, the term brain drain.
Yep.
And education. So, by the way, I'll remind our viewers, we have a few minutes left, but we're with Shannon Zimmerman, who's running for the 10th Senate District in the special election. The primary is December 19th. Mm-hmm. So, talk a little bit about on education, because the 10th Senate District has two universities.
Yep.
It's got 2 or 3 locations for vocational schools,
Yes.
technical colleges. So how would you see that playing a role? Because there's been some people critical. They appreciate very much the recent increase in aid for our K-12 system,
Yep.
but feeling like maybe we've been overlooking the higher education. What would we do there?
Look, in all areas of education, there has to be a level of transparency and accountability wherever taxpayer monies are spent. So I begin by that stating the obvious there. But I would also, I'll say, advise our local residents, don't be so quick to miss the opportunity here of strategic investments in education to address some of the workforce challenges I just spoke about. If we don't think carefully and thoughtfully and in a futuristic manner, we're going to be in trouble down the road. I believe there's great opportunities. I serve on the River Falls Chancellor's Advisory Committee. I've been very active in that university. As a business owner in River Falls, we deliberately look to pull kids out of Stout and River Falls and get them into our company and as an intern and then a full-time employment before they even have a thought of leaving our great state. So I think that there's even better ways that we can integrate our educational centers and private sector business. And I would give people, I would give them cause for optimism here. During my first term, I visited, the Hudson superintendent, River Falls superintendent. I visited our technical colleges and universities. There's a lot of really good things going on there right now. And I'm selfish when I say this because I'm a big believer in education as it supports economic development and good jobs for families. There's opportunity we can do better, but we're headed in the right direction there.
All right, we've got a minute and a half left. Have we touched on the nucleus of issues that you feel like separates you out as being the one to choose here? I know you don't want to denigrate your opponent,
I won't do that.
But something that would be in your favor is...
Look, I am probably the least political person in Madison. I aligned with Governor Walker. I stood with Governor Walker on a budget that was passed this year because I thought it had all the right ingredients. Was it perfect? Wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. We did address education. We eliminated 3 taxes in the state of Wisconsin. Who doesn't like that? We even chipped away at personal property tax, which is certainly a step. The simple answer for me, or the simple thought I would want to leave with voters is this. I am the outsider. I'm going to look at things probably through the lenses of a business owner, an entrepreneur, and a person who is tenacious in finding the way to get things done. And that's what I will do from this Senate seat on behalf of the great 10th Senate District.
And maybe heal some of that rift that was between the Assembly and the Senate this last year.
Yep.
How did that? How do you feel like that should be addressed?
Well, first of all, and I'm going to be biased when I say this, I think that one of the greatest advantages of working in business is you learn to negotiate. And we watch television nowadays, and you turn on the national news, and everybody crosses their arms, and they're polar opposites. What happens there is you can be proud and righteous in your position, but nothing gets done. That's something that I will bring if I advance to the Senate. Is I'm going to work hard with a perspective on the Assembly from the position of the Senate to say there's a better way we can be negotiating on behalf of the taxpayers of Wisconsin, which is what we need to keep front of mind.
Very good. With that, we're running out of time. Thanks a lot for being on the show.
I appreciate your time, sir.
And thank you for watching another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. And please remember to vote on December 19th.